Hey George, how you doing?
Hey Brian, I'm shell-shocked. How are you doing?
Yeah, feeling a little bit the same way. You know how shell shocked we are, guys. Just to put this into context for everyone, and apologies if we're a bit laggy, but what you'll see in the bottom of the screen is the Data Mix podcast because that's the last thing we tested. George and I are the wrong way around, so if I point the way I normally point, oh my god, it actually is. Can I fix that? Is that okay? Do you mind if I fix it? Well, let's see if I can fix it. Is that there? There we go. There we go. Now I
Wow,
can point the wrong way and be the right way.
I can point them.
Welcome everyone. Just while I sort my captions out, this is where we're supposed to be. So, but you've got Brian, that's me over there. You've got over there. You've got
George, nice to see
Hey
you.
George, how are you, big man? You all right?
Yeah, it's been a mad week, and I'm just grateful to our guest who's coming up now for accommodating us because we managed to steal 15 minutes on Tuesday for a pre-call in amongst meetings and the general chaos that is our lives. And yeah, it's the saying, it'll be all right in the night.
I think it's absolutely remarkable that this show is even happening compared to what was happening 10 minutes ago. It was an absolute, I won't swear, but maybe later. It's fantastic to see you, mate. I know we didn't make it in the room today, but what do you think of my new background, by the way?
Impressive. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
You're going to have to zoom in on that, or at least bring it in at some point. I
I
can't
don't know if
quite
I
see what it
can,
is.
but we'll have a chat with our guest about it when he comes on. It has been a traumatic week, but luckily the kids have all shipped out the house now, so there's a little bit of quiet here to continue with episode 13, mate. We followed 10 and 11 and 12 and 13 in quick succession. We've been on our 2-week cadence, and it's really good to be back on that again. We are doing our best to continue that. Have you been in Cooper today, or when did you get back this week?
I got back about 10 o'clock last night on the beautiful flight that is the London City to Dundee route in a little propeller craft, which is a lot of fun. It was cancelled the night before due to high winds. Apparently, it managed to take off, but it took off sideways, which I'm glad I wasn't on that flight.
Yeah. Well,
just a normal night in Scotland.
We've all made it in one piece ahead of fire in between Halloween and fireworks. We're just about still here. But look, as much as we could talk about our lives, we run a show called The Data Mix, right? And we should talk a little bit about that. Episode 13. We have been all around the houses. Yeah, we have been all around the houses. Sorry, mate, on you go.
I was just going to say, this is your guest, so you have the honor of introducing.
Well, absolutely. So again, I'm not going to do much intro to start with because there's a bit of a story between me and my guest and how this all came to be. So I'd rather have him in the picture for that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, who is Dr. Joe Perez. And Dr. Joe,
Greetings.
I will flank you around and here so we can point down the way at you here. I hope that makes sense. How are you today, Joe?
I'll point up to y'all. Hey, I'm doing great. Brian, how are you, sir?
Very, very well. We're better now that we've had 5 minutes to just compose ourselves. We're good.
Hey,
but
there you go.
Hey, Joe, it's incredible to have you on the show, and especially given that the circumstances that we met each other. I don't know. I feel like we should let our audience know about how this all came to be. Do you want to give us a little bit of a spin on how that happened, and I'll add my part on afterwards?
Well, so I was asked to speak at the Scottish Summit. My brogue isn't too good, laddie. I sound more Irish than Scottish, and that's probably, I might start an international war or something over that. But anyway, I'll just talk like an American. I was asked to speak at the Scottish Summit. I've spoken there a couple of years, and it was amazing to get to travel to Glasgow for the first time ever. And you and I have been connected via LinkedIn for some time, and you just told me that you were going to come, and I was just so impressed that you would be so kind as to travel all the way from Edinburgh to Glasgow just to hear me speak. Well, that gave me even more inspiration to kind of whip up the crowd even more. It wasn't very big a crowd, but still, I don't care if the audience is a dozen or 1,000. I'm still going to give 120% to, to do my best to make it a memorable experience. And yeah, you came and you gave me some Irn Brew. I love that stuff. That was great. It wasn't even alcoholic or anything because I don't drink. So okay, it
Well,
was awesome. I did enjoy it. It was great tasting stuff and those Highland cookies or whatever. I can't remember some kind of
the
special
shortbread,
Scottish
yeah, it was
shortbread.
Highland
That's
shortbread, yeah.
Yes, and my wife and I have had that since, and she just loves it. And hey, quickest way
Yeah,
to my heart is to give my wife something that'll make her happy too. So,
yeah.
but we had a great time. It was such an honor and great to meet you, talk over lunch, and chat about my great passion regarding data, and tell you a little bit about my even greater passion, my wife. And so it was just a wonderful time, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'm just honored and tickled to death that you guys would ask me to be on your show.
Well, I'm gonna let George jump in a minute, but I'm kind of smiling ear to ear here, Joe, because first of all, you're Iron Brew and not recalling shortbread and all that good stuff. But I think more than that, I think that I think we had like 12 hours notice to sort out our original meeting. We really found out at the very last moment, and it was a case of drop
Yeah.
everything. I was helped a little by the fact your flights were cancelled a little here and there and delayed.
Yeah, that's
But
right. I
it was
was.
fantastic to meet you. And isn't it ironic that the one way we would have loved to do this show would have been in person, and we did the in-person
Oh,
thing
yes.
before we ended back virtual again. So, look, Joe, it's a delight to have you back on. George, I'll let you get a word in edgeways here. It's great to have Joe on, right?
Yeah, well, I really only met Joe this week. We had a really quick call, didn't we, about a month ago, Joe? But
That's
we've
right.
just been grabbing 5 minutes, 10 minutes here. And the thing that comes across most for me is your energy, Joe. I think Tuesday when we last spoke, you'd just been jabbed twice in the same arm. Do you know this term, jab? Is that a Scottish term? I've heard that before. What do you mean, jabbed? But we've
Yeah.
you've just been jabbed
It's
twice
still
in the arm.
sore.
Is it
Right.
still sore? You got the
Yeah,
double,
just a
the
little bit,
flu
not as
and the
bad.
COVID.
Yes, sir. It was,
Um,
yeah.
and I don't know if they put something extra in there, but you were buzzing, man. You were pure buzzing.
Well, that's kind of you to say. I'm just excited. Hey, I love life, and I love talking about data. I love talking about things that can be of a benefit and a help to other people. And what you see is what you get.
I
Good.
mean,
And
on you go.
what
Sorry,
what I
George.
see what I see is a lifetime of experience in the data industry. So we are looking forward to tap that this afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And the last sort of segue that I have here before we go to a little intro for you, Joe, and you can tell us a bit about yourself, is I hope you would notice that it was my 10-year anniversary last week, and my wife gave me this picture on the wall because I'm a
Oh,
huge basketball fan, right? And this is a custom art piece of Michael Jordan's dunk from the free throw line. I don't know how well you can see that, but I thought in homage of having your good American self on the show, I thought you'd appreciate a bit of basketball historic
absolutely.
culture from there, especially as I was watching Space Jam, the LeBron James version of Space Jam with my kids yesterday. So yeah, it all ties in. Look, it's an absolute delight to have you on the show, Joe. But on the off chance that there are people out there that do not know who you are, incredible, I know. Why don't you give us a bit of an intro about
Oh
who
my
you
goodness.
are and how you've came to be here?
Well, thank you, Brian and George. You guys are just way too kind to me. I tell you what. Well, I was a school teacher, an educator for 10 years before I got into my career in information technology. I have both a master's and a doctoral degree in secondary education, with a double minor in computers and theology. I morphed into IT in the early 90s, worked my way up through the ranks for the first, oh, good heavens, 25 years of that career at North Carolina State University. Not the other place where Michael Jordan went to school, which is okay. We got a good, nice, friendly rivalry going, with the whole basketball thing. So, but no, I got to cater to my passion, to my educational design. I got to put training programs together for the university as I went through becoming, let's see, a computer consultant, then analyst programmer, then manager of computer training. And my last stint over there was as a business intelligence specialist. So after that, some amazing people from Health and Human Services recruited me away from the university. The best career move I've ever made. where I actually get to do even more of this liaising between high level business partners on one side and high level technical partners on the other side. Since I understand both the technology and the business, since I know how the learning process works and can communicate, essentially part of my job is ensuring that we're able to develop solutions that both the people on the technical side and the people on the business side can be happy with, and that is all about making data actionable, all about ensuring that people who are the decision makers are able to derive the insight that they need in order to make those decisions, make informed decisions based on the data that they see, and hopefully have good, good outcomes because of it. So on the side, I get to speak at conferences, which is an amazing journey, getting to share with people all over the world about actionable data, about effective data storytelling, driving decisions with data, bringing data to life, facilitating innovation, and I even have some topics that deal with professional development, comparing teaching, coaching, and mentoring. So it's a wonderful thing that I get to do. I enjoy it, and I just, again, I want to create value. I want to bring value, and I want to exude value and excellence pretty much in everything I do. I don't always hit the mark, but that's the goal anyway.
Well, I mean that's an amazing intro, Joe, and I think there's so many things that we can talk about there to start with, and we will. But just let's just get back to our chat, because our chat is kicked off on LinkedIn right now, and we have a couple of people who I guess you might know. One person that I think I might know as well. But there you go. We've got Jonathan here. I can't wait to hear a great speaker, Joe Perez. So, Joe, apparently you have your fans, and we picked a good person to come on here. It's amazing. Thanks very much for joining the show, Jonathan. We'd love to have you here. If you have any comments, folks,
Yes.
please just put them in the chat, and we'll get them put in front of Joe as well. And it's quite funny. We still get LinkedIn user coming through, which is usually what I have a good idea of who this person might be, but worst accent ever, said in my truest Scottish accent at all. But you know what? We could talk about how Scottish accents are misunderstood. There's a very, very famous sketch in Scotland from a show called Burnistoun, where a Scotsman gets stuck in a lift that's driven by voice technology, and he has to get to the 11th floor. And I just recommend maybe we can find that during the show, and we'll pop that YouTube into the chat, because rather than me explain the anecdote, you should just watch a Scotsman trying to say 11 over and over again to an Alexa, and something not going the right way. But look, Joe, I think that let's find a place to kick off here. So one of the things that is super interesting I find about you is that you've straddled between private and public sectors, right? Mm-hmm. So how have you found that journey to begin with? What are the differences that you've found when dealing with data in the private and public spaces?
Sure. Well, I've been in government now for more than 30 years, and I have found that while there is a caricature of government, that government runs slow, that government is very expensive, that government is not efficient, I say hogwash. We want to try to make our government work as efficient as possible, though it might still take a while. But that's only because of all the crazy regulations and rules and things that we are by which we are bound. That does take a little bit longer to gain traction, as I have seen in the private sector. That is one difference. One thing that is the same, however, is that when people are dedicated to doing what's right, then whether they're public or private, whether they're government or in a regular corporation or a sole proprietorship or an limited partnership, whatever type of arrangement they might have, is if they're committed to doing the best for their customer, if they are committed to holding themselves to the highest possible standard, maintaining integrity with the data, and ensuring that things don't get skewed, ensuring that that they maintain the same high privacy standards and so forth, then we're going to get to the same place. We're going to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. We're going to hold to those standards and again, create value and provide what people need. It just
Yeah.
goes about doing it in a slightly different way, whether you're public or private.
Would you say that? So I'm speaking from some years of experience in the academic sector, which I guess sort of straddles that line between public and private.
Yes, it does.
They're often public finance, but what I found there is that that was generally a hotbed of good practice. So a lot of good practice came out of that. I think during these years, I felt I had more time to experiment, to sit down and try things out, and people were sort of quite collaborative in that
Oh,
direction.
absolutely. Yeah, the 25 years that I was at NC State University, another shameless plug, go Pack. The collaborative spirit amongst the different folks from the different colleges and the different disciplines. I mean, that there's a whole reason why it's called a university. Uni, it is a single unit. Versity, there's diversity. So you've got people in multivariate careers and all different kinds of disciplines that come together. And when it works right, it's because these people embrace that university mindset, the mindset of being, well, the university happens to be a research one, university. And so, yeah, they're going to encourage figuring out better ways of getting from point A to point B, and tapping into multiple resources and multiple viewpoints to get to where they want to be in a much more efficient manner. So, oh yeah, I'm all for that collaborative spirit. Not all governmental agencies are like that. There's state government and there's state government. And as you so very aptly pointed out, George, in a university, yeah, it's public because if the university is indeed a public university, as the one where I worked is, then they do still have those government regulations and rules and things that they have to, by which they have to abide. They also have the educational standards that they have to hold to as well. However, if they're partnering with industry, then of course they have the benefit of the faster moving bureaucracy that they're not saddled by as much when they engage in those public-private. I can't talk. I'm a speaker and I can't talk. That's good. Public-private. You try to say that 3 times. Public-private partnership. Yeah. And so then you have the best of both worlds, right? You have the security and the stability of a government agency, and you have the agility and flexibility of the public agency. You play to both of those strengths, and you're definitely going to experience some success, and you will have a greater opportunity for innovation. Why? Because there's a collaborative spirit, right? There's collaboration, there's competition, there's cooperation, there's compromise, a bunch of those words that begin with C. And it's great to have a nice mix of all of them, because when you cooperate, you both get what you want. When you compromise, you both give up a little bit of what you want. When you compete, you both want only what you want. But when you collaborate, it's the best of all worlds because, yeah, you want what the other person wants to get to that end point and get to it as quickly as you can. And you're going to be more apt to share those ideas because you're not looking upon the folks with those ideas as competition. You don't perceive them as a threat. So therefore you are more likely to build bridges than you are to erect walls. And
Yeah.
it's a whole lot easier for collaboration to go on when you got a bridge in front of you instead of a wall that's blocking your path.
Yeah. So when you're in an enterprise, how does that differ? Because generally you'll have a chief executive who sets the strategy, and and that person often takes a bet on where they think the business needs to go,
Right.
and then we would be sitting 3 or 4 levels down from there, really just implementing that strategy, whether we think it's the right one or not. Or am I wrong? Are there ways around that?
Sure. That's a good point because it depends on what kind of let's see. It depends on what kind of leadership structure you've got. What's the mindset of that leadership? Is it a case where they tend to be more of a micromanaging type person? Is it a case where they tend to be more of management by fiat, right, where the decree is made, thus saith the king, and that's the way it's going to be, regardless of how you might think. And there's something to be said about strong leadership that knows what they want and knows how to get it and understands. But at the same time, I think a great strength of leadership is leadership that, while, yeah, you respect the authority of the leadership, it's leadership that respects the input from their peers and their underlings, as it were, understanding that everybody has value that they can bring to the table. And to the
Mhm.
extent that leadership recognizes that and gives at least a little bit of latitude to the people further down the food chain, as it were, you know, then I think they're going to get more out of those very same people. And yes, I agree. It is tough to operate under a situation where leadership does not have that mentality, because maybe they've had a bad taste in their mouth of the other extreme of utter anarchy that can ensue when there is no leadership or direction or anything whatsoever. The company falls apart. So there's got to be some happy medium where you do have the strong leadership that does set the policy, but at the same time endeavors to engage other individuals who have valuable input to give. While my experience may be great and varied in a certain area, somebody else is going to have machine language. I'm somewhat weak in that area. So someone else that has that as their expertise, as their area of expertise, they come in and they offer their perspective. Someone else may be greater on certain, programming languages. Okay, I'm better at C++ than I am at Python. Okay, somebody else is better at R and Python than they are at C++. We get together, compare notes, and come up with the best solution that'll be beneficial to everyone. So, to the extent that there can be some horizontal communication and some vertical communication as well, and plurality in their viewpoint, then I think they'll achieve a greater level of success.
I think that's a really good point, and I want to throw something open to the chat, and I want responses on this, by the way. Joe mentioned C++. I want to know all the people in the chat who have used C++ in their lifetime. That will tell us a lot about the age group of this chat. So if you've used C++, I want a C++ in the chat, please. And if you used the Borland C++ version on the front of a PC magazine, you get bonus points.
Wow.
Yeah, this is
How about
serious stuff, Joe, right?
how about Fox Pro?
Yeah, wow, shareware. We could go on a different route here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to stay on
Yeah.
track, right?
Right,
So
right.
one of the interesting things you mentioned, and it's something that's come up on many of our topics recently, is leadership and where that stems from and the circumstances that it arises in, right? So that's a big topic in itself. So let me
Oh, yeah.
narrow it down for you for a little bit first. Have you found many organizations that you've gone into where that lack of leadership has been a serious issue to begin with? And just to tag on to that and give you a secondary point on that, when that has happened, have you found the drive happening from the bottom up, so from the development side to say we need more leadership, or from the top of the business, sorry, I got my hands all wrong, where the CEO or the board of directors are saying we need to give leadership to the business? How have you kind of seen that in your career, and how is it changing and what you
Sure.
see just now?
Right. That's an excellent question, Brian. Precy, I've seen it from both ends. Okay. In the university setting, when again when you have a bunch of academics, you have deans, associate deans, department heads, and directors of graduate programs that already have that mentality of let's see how we can get things done and not so interested in my way or the highway. It tends to be um, more of them saying from the top down, okay, we need this done, but we want to listen to your ideas. Y'all are the experts in executing what we want to see. Let's paint this with a broad brush, and to the extent that they meaning the leadership do this, and decide to paint with a broad brush and not tell the cow how to lick the calf. That I don't think they say that way in Scotland, but then they're going to get more accomplished. Okay, it tends to be that way because again, the university mindset is a little bit different. All right, I've seen it go in the other direction where the leadership doesn't really want to upset the apple cart. They're too interested in keeping things going in as the status quo. Okay, as I've said in some of my presentations, if you're not innovating, you're stagnating. Okay, you're satisfied with the status quo, you're eventually going to stagnate. And then the ground swelling from the ranks comes up, and okay, we're the ones that are having to deal with issues that have been brought up by bugs in the software, or we're the ones that have to come up. We're the ones that have to deal with people complaining about not getting their files, not getting their data for this month or next month. And so when leadership doesn't pay attention to that kind of thing, well, then again, there will tend to be more of a ground swelling from the bottom up, where they'll say, okay, look, we have this issue. Now, if it's a situation where in the case that I was in a couple of jobs ago, then they will recognize that and say, all right, yeah, there is an issue. Perhaps we've been a little bit too aloof about this thing. Let's sit down and talk about it and see what kind of a solution we can come up with. But it was driven from the bottom up, and yet when it was done the right way, we get the attention of the people up at the top. They start paying attention to the people at the bottom. We meet somewhere in the middle and work out something that's best for everybody. So yeah, I've seen it come from both directions.
Yeah, I'm just going to look over at George now and ask what his feedback is on this as well, because we've chatted about this before, George, right? And ideally, what Joe talks about there is a feedback loop, right? And when you reach that equilibrium where you've got that feedback loop, generally, I think you're in a pretty good place as a business. But how are you seeing it, mate? Are you seeing more of that happening now? I know this tags on to other topics that we've had about CDOs having a seat at the table and all that kind of thing. But what do you think?
I think if you've got the right people in the business, so the right roles, and people that are smart and incentivized and understand where the business wants to go, I think you can almost leave them to, give them an instruction, but then they will decide themselves using their expertise and their experience what the best way to deliver is. And I am certainly seeing more and more of that. So when the sort of general instruction is, for example, we want to be excellent at data as a business. We want to be data driven. These sort of very high level visions. You generally need just a little bit more than that. And then you can start feeding it down to the lower echelons of the business to actually get it done. So if you've got the right people there, I think you're right. Where you struggle is if you've got less experienced people or your team structures aren't quite right, and and also people that aren't incentivized or don't believe in the direction that's been given from leadership. Then you're struggling. I mean, I'm looking at Twitter right now. I'm just wondering what all these data engineers are thinking right now. Do they believe in the new direction or do they not? Will they be putting their heart and soul into this new business or will they not? I think it's the same for other businesses as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
I don't believe in a big stick either. I think I've seen the sort of big stick approach from the top down, and that doesn't work. People end up just leaving. They start looking for other jobs and they go.
I agree with you 100%, George. I think you hit the nail on the head. Okay, incentivized, and I'll add another word: incentivized and deputized. Right? They're incentivized. They got to see what's in it for them. Deputized, that's a kind of a corny way of saying it, but it just happens to rhyme with incentivized, and I love to use words that rhyme. And by deputized, I mean they are empowered. If you've been given a job to do, you have a mandate. Well, the mandate without the power behind it to accomplish what you've been told to accomplish, you're going to be spinning your wheels in frustration, right? The incentivized, well, you see, what benefit do I get out of it, right? I have a stake in this too. And I agree 100%, George. The leadership that sees that, yeah, they'll set the policy, and hands-on only to the extent that they got their finger on the pulse of what's going on operationally. But at the same time, you've got professionals there. They are skilled. If they're not skilled, then get them to the point where they can be skilled. Mentor them along the way. Put them alongside somebody else that has a higher skill level so that they can both, rising water lifts all boats, as they say, right? And once you get that done and they've been empowered to do what they need to do, let them know they are a valued member of the team. And a person who feels, one, they've got a stake in it, two, they are valued, that they are an important part of the success of this organization, and three, they have the ability, and either whether it comes with authority, whether it comes with resources, whatever, then that person, I'm in that situation, I'm going to give 130% instead of 110%, to get it done, because I see the value in it. I see that I am part of that success and that I am valued and deemed to be important and worthy of their attention. Well, if I'm worthy of their attention, they are worthy of my effort, and even more so.
Yeah, look, I think if I had a button here, I'd have my finger on it, because that is exactly what I think about what you said there. And just even that, when I was looking for a button, I almost pressed R2D2 in the background there, and it just got me to thinking in the Star Wars context, right? Those, in Star Wars, R2 and C3PO, they're not told to do specific technical tasks. They're just given a remit and said, you need to go and solve this problem the way that you know how, right?
Right.
And that's what makes us thrive as human beings, and that's what makes us thrive as part of individuals. And I have to sort of point this out as well, Joe, that a lot of organizations need people like yourself. And what I mean by that is people who are not only committed, but they feel like they've got the worth in the business to stay there for a long time. Because the opposite of that tends to happen nowadays, right? It's about jumping to get to new tech and do new things. But there's a lot to be said for stability and having people like yourselves and organizations, especially if they end up as enthusiastic as you do. So, I mean, do you find, obviously, it's a bit like a bell curve, right? The more that you have in terms of that sort of mid-level experience that really has seen stuff and knows how to handle it, and they're able to pass that down to their team and say, look, I don't care how you solve the problem. This is your problem to solve, and I'm giving you the responsibility to do that. I don't think I've ever felt more empowered in my career than when people have said that to me, right?
Amen to that.
I don't feel like I've been less demotivated ever in my career when people have said to me, you're going to be doing this particular thing for 6 months, right? And I don't want you to do anything else.
And this is how you're going to do it too.
Well, exactly. And I think that just ties in perfectly to our next topic. But before I do that, I do have to again just call back to the chat slightly here as well. So we've got LinkedIn user. If I could jump surreptitiously back to LinkedIn on my phone and find out who that is, because you can actually see in LinkedIn. Again, I have an idea. Yes to C++. Absolutely. You've got my respect in my book, whoever that is. And Good to see Tom on here as well. Thanks for coming along to the show, Tom. Part of Computer Science Uni Old School. Tom, I am with you. Heriot Watt, year 2000 graduate, C++, Java, fourth year programming project. I hear it all, mate, honestly. So thanks for coming along, Tom, as well. So yes, it's good to know that people are listening to what we are saying, Joe, right? And just to tie into that, and I'll bring George in a second here, but I just want to wander into our next topic here, because we talked about here what the worth is of being there and being given a remit rather than a specific task, right? And quite often we find that that's tied hand in hand with we're in data denial, right? And we're in data denial because we don't have the remit to understand what our data is doing in our organization. So let's kick off with this sort of broad topic. George, do you want to have anything you want to add on to this one to begin with? Because data denial to data driven, that's a long journey, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, if I could just sort of round off the previous conversation by saying one other key thing that that I think helps the whole story and make sure that you do get a successful delivery is to make sure that your team, your delivery team, were actually part of the decision. So if they are consulted and they feel that they're actually responsible for this solution because it's their solution, then I think you get a lot more the chances of success are higher. But just to then sort of segue into data denial, I think that what I've been seeing recently is that you will get organizations that are given a fairly specific remit, as in build this data product, and and within their tiny little world, they then think that they are building something that is, future looking, future facing. It's going to solve all organizations' problems. They are 100% behind it. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute, we're not, what I'm not doing is, is considering the rest of the data in the organization. All that legacy data over there, that's somebody else's problem. I care about my little project that I'm super excited about. It's new, it's sexy, it could change the world. But all this other stuff out here, that's difficult. That's somebody else's problem. So that's what I've been seeing quite a bit of. And this is then this kind of denial mentality. So you kind of almost deny that there is behind you a sea of data that we've created over the last 20 years. And that, that's in everything from Fox Pro to DBase to Access. Lots of flat files. Then you've got some sitting in AWS in flat files. It's like it's a nightmare. It's a major nightmare, and it's easy just to forget about that and then say, okay, but let's look forward. We've got this cool new product that we're building. We're going to build it the right way on top of a data platform that manages data in the right way. We're going to do master data management with this bit of data going forward, and all our new data in future will go into here. So how do you fix that problem, Joe?
Well, dude, just to say before we get into that area, I haven't even counted how many big triangles my little triangles make on my wall. So there's just the gravity of the task that sits ahead of us, right? But if you take that as a microcosm, that perfectly encapsulates what George is saying there, right? We're only concerned, a lot of us, about what's in front of our face. So I'll give it over to Joe now.
No, I agree 100%, guys. I mean, it's the silo mentality, right? Each business area, each theme, each discipline, if you will, has its own little fiefdom that it wants to hang on to. Right. This is my stuff. This is my pet thing. And I'll take care of mine. Who cares about the other? Forgetting once again that they are all part of a bigger organization. The other areas of the organization, the other silos succeeding, and yours also succeeding means that the company, the organization as a whole will succeed. And getting your goals aligned with the mission, vision, and goals of the organization, you will see that, hey, we all want the same thing. We want overall progress and success and innovation in our organization. So again, it's all in viewing these other silos not as competitors, but as collaborators. Getting back, don't want to mix my metaphors here, but yeah, it is, denying that there is an issue, not paying attention to the data that's in front of you. People that are looking at making business decisions based solely upon their intuition versus based on the information that they have about their business. A lot of individuals, they've got good business acumen. They understand their processes. They know what's going on in their company, and Yeah, if you've got a good intuition, it's important to go with your gut, as it were, to go with that intuition. But I propose to say that your gut is not any. Let's see, your gut is not good enough if it's not informed. And what is it that informs your gut? Well, data. Whether it be anecdotes about what's going on, reports from people in different departments. You don't consider that as being data. The narrow mentality of thinking that data is only something that is in a database, that it's just rows and columns. No, there's all kinds of different types of data. It's just information that is there for you to act on. Okay, and I think to the extent that that's recognized, and again, to your earlier point, get out of that fiefdom, get out of that silo mentality, and recognize that it's not my data or your data or his or her data, it's our data. And we need to pay attention to it so that we can derive that insight. One of the talks that I give on this very topic, I talk about getting into uh, being data driven, and I talk about 5 pillars of getting to that point. Easy way to remember it: look, link, listen, leverage, and learn. Right. So you look at your data. You understand what it is that you have in front of it. Link. What kind of relevance does it have to other business areas? How does it all tie together? Listen, that is looking at the significance of what the data is telling you, right? Understanding the trends, the nuances, the patterns. There is some message behind that.
Mhm.
Leverage. Once you've looked, linked, and listened, leverage that knowledge into a cohesive strategy and then learn from it. Get to the point where you've documented it, you've repeated, you're at a point where it can be repeated, where you can move forward and start the cycle all over again. Typically, when I give advice or when I give a talk or when even in my own situation, I keep those pillars in mind: look, link, listen, leverage, and learn. Um, Nice way to remember it. It's not always so simple, but if we can break a complex problem down into simple components, then it's a whole lot easier to tackle one of those components, each of them one at a time, than to try to bite off the whole thing at once. Right? What is that stupid little adage? How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. Right? Break that ginormous, insurmountable uh, issue that you can't get over. Well, that's why it's insurmountable. Anyway, don't look upon it as something that's going to take you 5 years. Look, what am I going to do today? What can I do right now at this moment? What is just one part of the issue that I can tackle, and not just that I can tackle? What other expertise exists on my team, so that I can get a broader perspective of how to go about tackling this thing? Take it apart into measurable, attainable things that you can conquer one step at a time, and then celebrate what little progress you've made to motivate yourself to go on and tackle the next one tomorrow.
Mhm.
Folks, I hope you're listening to this, because this is like absolute dynamite. This stuff. This is absolutely awesome. I mean,
Too
the, the,
kind.
the concept of breaking it down, absolutely, that's been there the test of time. But having the acronyms to understand how that happens, and I have to say, Joe, I have to call back to our meeting in Glasgow when I was thrown a starburst for remembering that. That will be
Yes,
a moment that I always remember.
I still do
And
that
look,
every time I speak.
it
You
worked.
come to hear
Believe
me,
me, it
you're going to
worked.
get some
If
Starbust.
I
Yeah.
get confectionery every time I get something right, I'm going to get a lot of things right. And just to tie that back, I think there's one person who just surmises this really well, and it just popped into my head, and I had to write it down while you're saying it. And it's Belinda Carlisle. We dream the same. We dream we want the same thing, right? So
Wow.
everyone
I
like
like
thinks
that.
about this epitaph of we can do it, right? But it's about translating that into something real, because quite often those silos that you talk about are what
Yes.
Belinda is talking about. They're just dreams in people's
Absolutely.
heads, right? And we need to. That's what we need to do. We need to get them out of Belinda's head and into ours. I don't know what I'm talking about now, but anyway,
No, that's good.
look, I think that's a key topic there, and just again a call back to our chat because we've had some more great stuff going on in here as well. Dalton, who is just like, I don't know what to say to you anymore, Dalton. You don't think we can cover this topic in an hour? We can cover this topic in an hour. We're experts. Or Dr. Joe is an expert, and we just we're just here for the ride. And I think, here's another one from Dalton as well, just talking about, the 13 master lists of physicians. There's the problem right there, right? The multiple silos rather than the one centralized thing that helps to make everything make sense. I think these are great stuff that's coming in here. And Jonathan deserves Starburst because he is remembering and writing these things down as we go as well. So
yeah,
well, this is awesome. Sorry, George, I'll let you in now, but I just had reference to these points here as well. Thank you, audience. Keep them coming. We're loving this.
I am sitting here listening and learning. I'm doing the middle too.
Yeah.
It's
just link and leverage. Do those two.
but you know what? When you see that that giant elephant and you start slicing the elephant up and start eating it one slice at a time, that's all well and good. But which bit should you eat first? And what I mean by that is where to start. If you're thrown into a giant organization. And there is, there's legacy data that, maybe you've only got 5% of customers accessing. You've got your sort of main data within there. You've got your kind of enterprise data, the stuff in the CRM and the ERP, but you might have a couple of data products out there as well that's generating a whole different kind of data. I mean, I'm trying to make this as complex as possible, of course. And you don't have a data strategy, and you're duplicating data all over the place. You've got issues with data privacy. You've probably got a couple of lawsuits on you at the same time because you don't have good governance. Where do you start with that mess? I mean, I would just want to run away.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Now, at the risk of having the World Wildlife Federation come after us for talking about consuming endangered species, let me be quick to point out, no elephants were actually harmed in the filming of this special.
Love it.
Yeah. So metaphorically speaking, right? Yeah. Besides, elephant doesn't taste good. It tastes.
So just to underline, no animals were hurt during the making of the show.
That's right.
Despite Joe's comments, further disclaimer. Carry on.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want to get blacklisted off the, whatever. All right. All teasing aside. You look at, okay, what's in front of you? All right. What is the low-hanging fruit? Balance immediacy with urgency, right? Or excuse me, balance importance with urgency, right? You go through a grid, you triage, you say, okay, what is it that demands my attention right this minute? What is it that has the highest level of criticality to my getting through between today and tomorrow? What is it that has some sort of finite deadline associated with it? What is it that is affecting production that I cannot get out of this day until XYZ is done? And just in the same way that a hospital triages their patients when they come in the sense of say a disaster, something that emergency response teams are dealing with, right? They look at what's the most critical, who will die if I do not take action, who can survive a few more minutes and give me a chance to deal with this person who will die if I don't take action in the next 10 seconds or whatever. I may be I may not be exaggerating. So, I would tackle it that way. I mean, I look at the trunk and I prefer to slice, take a slice out of the trunk where, the foot is the thing that's pressing on my windpipe. So I got to take care of that foot first before I take care of the trunk. The trunk's not doing anything. It's just over there drinking water or whatever. I'm getting stupid. But anyway, the idea is adopt the mentality of triage, right? Adopt the balancing act. Make smaller decisions. Don't if you look at a multifaceted problem that demands a multidisciplinary search, then you have to have a multifaceted solution, right? And you are staring at 15 different dimensions simultaneously. That is more than the human brain can. And this is why people get overwhelmed and frustrated, because they are looking at the entire bombardment, the barrage of munitions that are coming raining down upon their poor soul, and they get overwhelmed. Instead, shift your focus a little bit. Look at what one or two things, break it down into pairs. Pretend like you're a computer. Okay, when we talk about machine learning, we talk about artificial intelligence, and people get all up in arms about, the machines are taking over, and Arnold comes and he says, "I'll be back, Skynet is going to get you," yeah, or whatever. Okay, and I know my Austrian accent is worse than my Scottish brogue, so you can comment if you want. But all kidding aside, we say that because we view the AI in an adversarial relationship, thinking computers are going to take over the world. I'm going to get replaced by a machine in my job. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as a point of, okay, when it comes to black and white, ones and zeros, yes, no, left, right, or whatever, the computer does its job, and it is much better and faster and more efficient at that type of thing than we are. Therefore, let the computer do what it does best. We are better at the nuanced and the things that we do best, the gray areas. All right. So adopt that. I have a point with this, and bear with me for a moment. All right. Here's my point. If we know that computers are so efficient when they do this very thing, because that's the only thing they can do, why can't we do the same thing? We see a huge multivariate problem with multiple dimensions to it that, again, getting back to that, are being overwhelmed and being frustrated. Adopt the mentality of a computer. See where there are places that you can break it down into yes, no, 1, 0, left, right. And if you look at it that way and break it down and say, do I do this now? Yes, no. Yes, set it aside. No, set it aside. Is it important or not? Does it demand my immediate? So when we break all those different parts down and make it into ones and zeros, turn it from analog to digital, if you will, then we can start chipping away at those things and we can see some progress being made. And we know that at least we have an action plan of how to get to from point A to point Z. Right? I'm just going to worry about B, C, and D right now. Eventually, I'm going to get to Z. If I keep on worrying about how am I going to get to Z, I've got 25 other points from here to there. Let me just focus on these first few things and categorize this stuff so I can determine where is B, C, and D, and not worry about X, Y, and Z just yet. You'll get to it, but concentrate on what's right in front of you. Get to that point where at least you can make some progress. That was a long way of saying it, but that's how I would tackle it.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Look, I think that what you described there, and it's really interesting that we started off with the phrase like data driven, right? Because what you're talking about there is decision driven rather than data driven, right? Data driven is when you've got to get from A to B and you need to know a method to get there, right? But decision driven is understanding how to get from A to Z and how to structure the path to get from A to Z. It's not about the physical problem itself. And George, I think this is another thing that we need to just find a way to get into in another episode, because data driven is a buzzword. it's a buzzword that's used to describe the path to get from one part of a problem to another, but it doesn't address everything, right? It doesn't address the framework that sits on top of that. And I think that's a really interesting topic. I'm just aware that we've got, probably less than 5 minutes left in the show.
Oh, wow.
Which is unbelievable. So I just want to put a little shout out there. If anyone wants to hear another accent from Joe, you're running out of time. We will take requests, but there's only 4 minutes left in the show, so you need to get them in quick. Look, Joe, this has been magnificent. I think one of the paths that we were trying to go down here as well is, and I think the question that we're trying to answer there is, how do you turn your organization into a data-driven organization? I think what we've done there, if you'll pardon the pun, is dissect some of those parts of the elephant or the tree or wherever we were at when we turned into the alphabet. I can't quite remember.
Right.
But I think that part is really important, right? It's about. I posted only yesterday on LinkedIn about the requirement just to stop and take stock, right? And often we don't see businesses doing enough of that. They get caught up in a process. They don't want to stop the process because they're so invested in it, and they don't stop. And sometimes data-driven becomes data-driven at all costs. And I think that's the thing we need to avoid, right?
Absolutely. Don't, get to use another overused phrase, like the cow, not telling the cow how to lick the calf, is losing sight of the. Let's see. You can't see the trees for the forest, or you can't see the forest for the, whichever way it is.
The wood from the trees, I think it is in the UK. The wood from the trees.
Right, yeah, indeed. So that they can't see what's in front of them because they're so focused on what's so far ahead, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea of blending the tactical with the strategic, right? Keep your mind, have that overall strategic view, the long view in mind, but don't ever take your finger off the pulse of the operational, the tactical, what's going on in the day-to-day world, the things that are going to drive and execute the plan so that you can get to your long-term goals. Keep both of them centered in your mind. Don't lose sight of that long term, but don't forget that it's those short-term operational things that get you to that long term.
Yeah.
Wow. There's the encore there, folks. That is the curtain. What's the opposite of the curtain raiser, George? Just to finish off the show. I mean, just some comments on just a great hour that's just flown by.
It has, yeah. A lot of food for thought there. I'll be dreaming of elephants when I go to sleep tonight, but not in a sliced up way, I hope. But I think in general
that wouldn't be too tasty, George. I mean, I think you're not going to like them elephants unless you got them cooked just right.
Now, you wanted an accent? That's an accent, all right?
Absolutely.
Shut up.
I was just going to ask you to say Iron Brew again, but you've just topped that many times over.
I love the Iron Brew.
Look, everyone. This has been fantastic. I hope you all appreciate how much fun Dr. Joe has been for us today. It's been great. We do, just before we sign off, we just have to get a few plugs in of our own as well. If you've enjoyed frankly hilarity and chaos of this episode, we do have our YouTube channel where you can catch all 12 of our previous episodes and everything going forward as well. That all automatically uploads after the show. And if you can be patient for a couple of days, you can have us in your earbuds as well in the Data Mix podcast, which runs a couple of days after every show. Wow. We are now at 59:32. We're doing exceptionally well here. Look, I just want to say thank you to our tremendous audience out there. We've had great stuff coming out from them as well. Love to know that there's other C++ users out there. Thank you to Dr. Joe.
Yes,
to my
sir.
Darkening colleague George, where the light is clearly going down in Cooper as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to have to put my lights on soon. We're a bit stingy here, so we'll put one light on.
Thank you so much for having me on your program.
It's been awesome.
It's been my honor, sir.
And we love to give our viewers their Fridays back. So with that, we will thus endeth the episode 13 of the Data Mix. Thank you all so much,
Dr. Joe, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Very
Look forward
soon
to it.
for episode 14.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.